We're going to go ahead and take a look at probability now. 3.1 and 3.4 focuses on some mathematical calculations, but it's really the ideas that are important that we need to take away, since statistics relies on probability to make decisions. How likely is, what are the chances, right, that we observe some data under certain assumptions? And so let's start by looking at kind of the definition of probability. You don't have this worksheet, but I just want to introduce you to this idea real quick before we get to the guided notes. And so when we think about probability, another way to think about it in your life is, has someone ever asked you, would you rather, right? Or what are the chances, right? And so when you have these questions, you are being prompted with a probability situation, right? So would you rather receive a gift of $5 for sure, or take a 1 in 1,000 chance for $4,000, right? Or a sure loss of $5. Or would you have to take one of these chances, right? Which one would you choose? Would you rather have a sure loss of $5? You have to pay $5. Or would you 1 in 1,000 chance of losing $4,000, right? It's hard. I mean, you use your instincts, but many times what we learn is that our instincts are not aligned with probabilities. And so we make bad choices because we use instincts that do not have a sense of what are the chances are, what's the probability of these things occurring. To put into a social context, would you rather be born in Santa Ana, California, or Beverly Hills, right? There's a lot loaded into that question, but you are putting some likelihoods of outcomes based off of this, and those are probabilities. Would you rather have a college degree or not have a college degree, right? You are evaluating, right, your future outcomes based off of these things, and that's a probability. And just as we go ahead before we get into this section, I just want to remind you the way we represent probabilities is through fractions and percentages. And relative frequencies, all those get interchanged, and those all get connected to probability, and as we calculate these values, right? And then we also put words to them: never, rarely, fair, often, always, right? And so looking at this again, I just want to remind you again, we use fractions to turn into decimals, and those decimals turn into percent. So it's connected to relative frequencies and percents. But again, you can see, you can pause and take a look at this, but you can see the calculations and how we then put words to them, which then leads us to our definition of probability, right? And so that comes from our note sheets here. Let me get it into there. There we go. And so you have this kind of introduction here, but informally, it's just the chances or likelihood that an event will occur, right? And the event can be many things. We call that an outcome also, right? And so looking at this here a little bit more formally, we see the probability is the predicted long run relative frequencies. So that gets a little more complicated versus the chances or likelihood, right? But over the long run, right, probabilities are not necessarily predictions of what's going to happen. It's just how often we're going to expect to see some outcome over an extended time, right? Meaning that if we did something many times over and over, the probability of the event is the proportion of times we saw that event occur. And so we have some definitions: outcome, event, sample space. Okay, and these get a little confusing. But again, one way possible way something can happen is an outcome. An event is a collection of outcomes. Okay, and so you could have what we call a simple event, which is just one outcome, right? But a collection of them. If you just have one, it's an outcome. But you start to look at a collection of them, versus the sample space is the set of all possible outcomes. And so we'll take a look at some of this as we go on. Okay. Continue on probability event. So the notation is important to recognize here. The probability of an event happening, A, we use this notation. And you can see it's the number of outcomes of A divided by the total number of possible outcomes as we look at these examples here. And you're going to find a lot of other resources. This first introduction is probably probabilities that you've seen in previous classes, and if it's been a long time. And for sure, we get this in 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. But we never really put context to it, and that's what we do in statistics. And so you can look at some of these examples and get them here. I want to really spend some time. I'll stop there and we'll finish on the next one.